Good afternoon and welcome to this special edition of Sekeres and Price for Saturday, December 6, 2025, presentation of Bet365 from Chase Stadium in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and MLS Cup. As always, our program is a presentation of Bet365. Whatever your bet, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Download the app, get in on the game, use code NATION. When doing so, must be 19 or older. Please play responsibly. Well, Matt Sekeres joining you here. And if you're wondering where is Blake Price, he had hockey play-by-play duties for TSN today, as we talked about on the regular edition all week. I was the lucky guy who got a chance to come down here to Florida and cover Vancouver Whitecaps FC in the biggest match in their franchise history, or at least since the 1979 Soccer Bowl. Final score, Inter Miami 3, Vancouver Whitecaps FC 1. So, pinch hitting for Blake Price today. He's also here at Chase Stadium in Florida is our dear friend Manuel Veth of Transfer Market, a Victorian. He's been our special Thomas Muller correspondent, his fellow German and Bavarian. And Manuel, I'll just start with what an event and what a scene we saw here in Fort Lauderdale today.
Yeah, I mean, everything was amazing except for the final result, right? No, this final MLS Cup final, I think it's increasingly still getting the international recognition that it deserves, right? It is a grand occasion. It's a great day. It's one of the few domestic leagues that have a proper final to determine its national champion. In this case, international champion, I guess, because it's cross-border. And I've done a few MLS Cup finals now, and they always feel special when you're here. I think they always have this ability to really make you feel like you're a part of a great occasion. When I looked at the press box today, there was all the big German press was here. The Athletic, 4 people here, right? ESPN, you name it. They all had several people here. We were here, most importantly, I think. And it is always such a great thing. And I was managed to go on the parking lot and talk to fans a little bit before the game and get a temperature check. It was hot. It felt really hot. The hottest MLS Cup final in history. It's still a hit. So it's 30 degrees Celsius, 84 Fahrenheit. It's hot. And yeah, it felt like such a grand occasion. And I actually felt like a really great game too. And this 3-1 scoreline.
It was.
You have to keep it. Yeah. The third goal didn't come in until the 96th minute. It was tight. It was a really tight final.
That's right. Well, and especially, the Whitecaps and Emmanuel Sabbi hit 2 posts when they have Inter Miami on the ropes and looking like they were going to take the lead in the second half. Let's just explain a couple of things here for everybody. These are unusual circumstances and settings for a Sekeres and Price show. We were hoping to do this outside, but alas, Miami's the city of base, and they've got quite a party going over here at the Hard Rock Lounge overlooking the field. So we weren't able to get outside and do this at field level or anywhere else. We were trapped inside this soundproof or almost soundproof press box, Manuel. First thing I want to say is shout out to the 2,000 plus Whitecaps supporters who made the trek, the longest trek in all of MLS, from its furthest Pacific Northwest market to its furthest Southeast market to support their club. The scene here was amazing with all that pink, of course, the predominant color for Inter Miami, and then that corner over there in the one end zone of blue and white, and Cap supporters and all their songs and chanting and support that they gave the team. Manuel, this was a magnificent match, and I think you could argue that Vancouver was the best team from minute 1 or however long it went. It's just that number 10 guy on Miami, he changes this game with three touches. That's all it takes for him to change this game and lift the trophy.
It's always these small margins, right? Like, what this game reminded me of, Matt, a couple years ago I did the Champions League final between Borussia Dortmund and Real Madrid, and there was moments where Borussia Dortmund had Real Madrid on the ropes, but they didn't finish their chances. And in Real Madrid, what Real Madrid always do, and they won the game 3-1, right? This game felt so similar. It felt so very similar, because there was all these moments where you thought, right after Ali Ahmed makes it 1-1, Sabbi has that chance with the double post. That goes in, it's 2-1. We're probably going to write a different story right now, right? And that's brutal, because you like Dortmund then, the Whitecaps now, where we're going toe to toe with a team that on paper had so many more superstars than they did, and highlighted really what an amazing team they are. And like that's unfortunate in some ways because the story is always about the victor, right? Like we never really go back and write about the team that loses. And I think this team, the Whitecaps, deserve so much applause from all of us and the fan base too. You know, we mentioned I done a few MLS Cup finals. I think this is the loudest away fan group that I've ever experienced my entire life. There was another 24,500 at BC Place. There were more people at BC Place than here. Just that's it again for a moment, you know, and that is incredible.
And
This is a franchise that was almost dead like a year ago, right?
yeah, and honestly, Manuel, you say we write about the winners, we talk about the winners, we don't pay attention to the losers. I think you could argue there are two winners based on the way that this Whitecap season went, their performance here tonight, and of course everything that this means for the franchise going forward. We got an opportunity to talk to some of the Whitecaps players in the mix zone after the match tonight, including their usual captain, Ryan Gall. As we know, there's a little bit of a dual captaincy when Thomas Muller comes to your team because he is the captain of all captains. Mike, if you're ready to go there, let's hear from Ryan Gall because, as mentioned, in the second half, after that beautiful goal from Ahmed, and what a pass Brian White through the box to set that one up. Emmanuel Sabi had the chance of a lifetime, and somehow, some way, it hits a couple of posts and stays out. Let's hear from Whitecaps captain Ryan Gall on that moment.
Two posts and out. You feel like it was lost there? Do you still feel like you had them on the ropes and had a chance to beat them after that?
Yeah, I think we were in a good position after the goal. Obviously, like you said, Sabi unlucky with his the ball going off the post twice. And, I thought we were in a pretty good position. Unfortunately, they got the pitch, make it 2-1, and then it's an uphill battle again. So it was a tough one to take. Yeah.
And Manuel, he talks about how quickly after what Vancouver should have made it 2-1, it is 2-1 for Inter Miami, and I'm absolutely destroyed for the destroyer Andres Cubas, who turns the ball over there because he has been so magnificent for the Whitecaps all season long. As we had talked about all week, he has never lost to Lionel Messi, despite playing for Paraguay versus mighty Argentina down in South America, and he was supposed to be the Messi antidote. He makes one false move, and it's in the back of the net.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, it's so hard to put it down to that one moment because how heavily do we weigh the missed opportunities, right? And defensively, it was always going to be hard or impossible, really, to shut them down completely. But you're right. I mean, like that moment was the one that unleashed Miami's attack, and Allende is so clinical, right? And DePaul, of course, the third. Sorry, it's the other way around. it's late. We had a long day, but it's these moments though that where when I thought Cuba's okay, yeah. Could he done that better? Could he defended it better? You think Sørensen kind of touched on it, that it is not just those moments that are decisive. It's also the moments in attack where you have to be clinical and you have to take your chances when you get them, and you're going to get so very few. They were better at doing this against San Diego. They were better at doing this against LAFC. Mind you, they had a grand chance against LAFC that almost cost them too. So maybe this is when you look back now, when we dissect the season, it's going to take some time for us to sit down and properly dissect the season. But maybe those are the moments that make the difference, right? Where against LAFC, like that, where they were up 2-1, and if Brian White scores that against Lloris, it's 3-1, and we don't have to worry about penalties and all that other stuff, right? And today, Sabi scores that, and we're probably not recording because we're sitting somewhere drinking beers.
or my friend, we're into extra time and penalties. Yeah. Manuel, you know so much more about the game than I do, so I'm going to defer to you on this. But I have seen some commentary on Twitter, and oh my God, I hate to second guess him because Jesper Sorensen, with an absolute master class from tip to tail this season. You know, I had said a couple of years ago that Rick Tockett's coaching job of the Canucks, which won him the NHL Coach of the Year, was truly one of the great coaching jobs that I've ever seen in 25 years of covering sports. And Jesper Sorensen with Vancouver Whitecaps FC this year stands right with that, if not above. I mean, what an absolute master stroke after master stroke this year from Jesper Svensson. So I don't want to pick on him, my friend, but I have seen some chatter about the substitutions he made when he made them, because it looked like the Whitecaps had a ton of momentum at that juncture, and he took a couple of players off the pitch, including the goal scorer Ali Ahmed, who were sort of stirring the drink there and causing Miami trouble. Your thoughts on the substitutions he made and when he made them?
So, full disclosure, I have a vote for MLS Player of the Season and Coach and Best 11 and all that, and I voted for Jesper Sørensen. Yeah, sure. You know, maybe the substitutions could have been different. Maybe they could have used Ryan Gold better. Maybe they should have taken off Thomas Müller, who was certainly not 100%, although I don't have the exact numbers yet, but someone in the mix on one of the German media said that he ran the most of all Whitecaps players. So, you know, maybe fitness not the biggest issue. Although Thomas Müller did admit that he felt he wasn't at his best, that he didn't feel like he had as much control over the final third that he wanted to. And then that begs the question, then, do you sacrifice your superstar? Do you sacrifice number 13 to bring on Ryan Gold instead? I know Ali had some issues with his ankle, right? I know that the team in general is suffering towards the end, so not all the substitutions are necessarily tactical. Some of them are forced. It's been a long year. You know, this was the Whitecaps' third final. The season started for them in early February with the Concacaf Champions Cup, and now, you know, ended at the beginning of December. It's a long year. So, you know, with that in mind, I think some of these substitutions, he will be the first to second guess them. You know, he'll be the first to say, look, could I have done better? We all know his post-match comments are very much about that. He did say after this game, which is different than most games, that when it comes to analysis, he wants to maybe think about it a little bit, because these games are emotional, right? Like it's a tough thing to be in and a tough thing to lose. And right after the game, when you lose a big match, we've all been there. We've all been in those situations. Everyone who plays sport has been in a situation where they lost a big match, and then you're angry, right? I had a teacher once who told me, like, look, if you don't like your grade, sleep over it all night and then come and complain to me about it, because you will actually have had some time to think about why you had a bad grade. And I actually, you know, I think that applies really well to sport too. Like, he will sleep over it for a night. And then I know him and Axel like to go for walks to talk about the matches, and then they go for a walk and they will have an analysis and they will come up with the right conclusions. But criticizing him for losing this match, I don't know. That means, again, Sabi puts the ball in. We're talking about a completely different situation.
Let's get into that, Manuel, because early in the second half, the Caps were majestic. They were just fantastic. And in front of their fans, they had so many scoring opportunities. But there's a couple in the first half that, oh my goodness, I mean, Sabi all by himself. He might have been too tight in on goal. That might have been the problem.
I think so.
The Miami keeper, the Miami keeper makes the save, and then he's got hands in face, can't believing he missed that. Thomas Muller with a header that the Miami keeper catches, but has to sort of move forward to make sure it doesn't cross the goal line. There was a Berhalter ball that was just a couple of feet too long for Brian White, would have been a tap-in goal. I mean, chance after chance Vancouver had as that first half went along, and early into the second half.
There was another one in Matt, there was another one in the very start, just before the own goal, where there's a ball coming in low from the right. I can't remember who it was, but Thomas Müller just fails to connect, and you know that if he connects that, it's a goal. Right.
Yeah, honestly, you can't play that game the other way either, because the Miami chances were in the back of the net. I mean, maybe there were a couple of Miami chances where they felt like they should have scored. Tacoca made one good save in the first half, as I recall. But boy, oh boy, as the match went along, Vancouver continued to press that high press that Jesper Sorensen has had all year. And then I guess if there was one disappointing part from a Vancouver standpoint is that there really wasn't a great threatening chance opportunity when the game was 2-1 in the late stages. It seems like the offensive attack sort of petered out for Vancouver over the final 15, 20 minutes of the match.
And Jesper said that much in the post-match, right? He said that, like, after what did he say? I'm almost quoting, slightly paraphrasing. He said the Stairs second goal took the wind out of our sails, and we didn't quite manage to get back into the game after that. And I think that was a really fair assessment on his part. The second goal was a gut punch, wasn't it? That was the moment that decided the game, and they just weren't able to then put up the pressure and the energy to overturn this game a second time. And I always felt like that this would be a 1 or 2 goal game, that the margins would be really, really tight. I know there was a lot of analysis ahead of the match that these are two teams that like fireworks. They both have scored over 100 goals and over their respective seasons. These are two teams that are really great to watch, love scoring goals. I've seen so many finals in my life on location on television, Matt. I know that when it comes to finals, it becomes cagey. And that's what happened here. It became cagey and it took out the flow. And, the one thing I maybe have to say about that is that Miami tried to tie Whitecaps down in these individual battles. They're so good at that, the little fisticuffs, the stuff that annoys the crap out of most people watching football. But they were really good at that. But I think actually Thomas Müller in particular, that's where he was so valuable. They could see him have these little conversations with Rodrigo de Paul all the time and basically tell him, like, look, I've won 35 trophies. Stop playing this game with me. Like, I'm not gonna take. Like, I'm not gonna be standing for this. And I thought they actually handled that quite well.
Manuel, I thought not only did Vancouver handle that well, I felt there was a little bit of mimicry going on. I felt like the Caps decided, okay, we can play that game too. And all of a sudden you had a lot of Whitecaps that were down on the pitch. It winds up being 6 yellow cards to 3 for Miami. It seemed like a number of the Vancouver journalists I talked to felt a little miffed with the officiating. We should mention a Canadian referee, a Canadian VAR official, and yet every single player and coach who I heard talked about it had zero problem with the officiating. I thought Ryan Gauld and Jesper Sorensen were amazingly classy with what they had to say about the officiating. Thomas Müller as well. And, you talked about how difficult it is in the aftermath of a devastating loss like this. We should shout out Sorensen, Gauld, Müller, Matthias Labora, Ralph Priso all walked through the mix zone and were as professional as I can remember a losing side, and they deserve a lot of credit for that. They were pure class here today in the aftermath. This is a special edition of Sekeres and Price minus Price from Chase Stadium in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and MLS Cup. Our guest is Manuel Veth of Transfer Market of Victoria, British Columbia. And he's a presentation of your Pacific Toyota dealers and the Toyota Prius plug-in hybrid and no-compromise approach to electric vehicles that offers the best of both worlds. You can drive up to 72 kilometers on battery alone. That's enough to get you downtown to the rink, the grocery store, home to recharge. We've been telling you about this beautiful vehicle, the sporting lines, all the space it has in the back, goalie gear, and your golf clubs. And right now, you can lease a 2026 Prius plug-in hybrid SE from $109 weekly at 3.99% APR for 64 months with $3,300 down. Visit shoptoyota.ca or your local Pacific Toyota dealer today. Manuel, I know you had some different responsibilities than just covering the Whitecaps as a beat in the post-game for Transfer Market and for your podcast, so you were probably going to hear this for the first time. Here is your countryman, here is your fellow Bavarian, Thomas Müller. I asked him afterwards what the club gained this season. Here's Müller.
Show up next season.
Mike, what did the club gain this year? What do you think the club gained this year?
a lot of people's hearts, because the way we do it, this group is so lovable. We play with our hearts. Maybe we play. Nobody plays a perfect soccer game. We don't do this even in our good games, but we gave it all, and that's what matters the most. And the way we do it, the respect we have also, not only for the fans, also for the whole city, for the people in the city, and for media and all this stuff. So we are a very lovable team, and we will continue this journey, how we do it. And I hope, and we will work very hard that we get next year a little bit more trophies. They deserved it. They were in the CONCACAF final already, but we will. Yeah, don't talk too much about the future now. It's tough to take this one.
He is doing your country. He is doing your city, Munich. He is doing your province, Bavaria. He's doing them all proud, Manuel. Your response, your reaction to what you heard there.
Yeah, so I caught him again in German a little bit later, and he repeated a few of those things that he said there. Yeah, look, he wants to win. He wants to win titles. That's what he's here for. 3 finals is great for the Whitecaps. In his mind, that's 2 trophies missed, right? Even though he wasn't here for the CONCACAF Champions Cup final, but that's a trophy missed. He will do everything in his power that when he leaves the Vancouver Whitecaps, his personal Vancouver Whitecaps trophy case is going to be full, and that is going to be good for the Whitecaps. It's going to be good for a club that is in a place that when we flew down here, Matt, we spoke a little bit about the stadium situation and all that's happening, right? And there's reports out east that make things difficult, and I think he's arrived at a time where this club needed a shot in the arm, and needed to maybe remind the people of Vancouver that there is greatness in the city. Especially at a time, and I'm a huge Canucks fan. I wear the hat, but like at a time where the Canucks are very difficult to watch, it is nice that another team steps into the void and is actually pushing for trophies, and has won a trophy. We can't forget the Canadian Championship is no longer a small tournament. It involves many teams, and it's hard to win, and it's hard to win repeatedly, is what the Whitecaps have done. That's not nothing, but I think there's more. Like he will probably want to win the Supporters' Shield. It's 3 in a row, right? Not 4, it's 3. 4 in a row next year. So let's look in the future there. CONCACAF Champions Cup, that's a trophy he probably want to win. It's another continental trophy, right? And he wants to come back to MLS Cup final. I think this is for him. It's just the motivation of doing one better next year, and that's going to be hard, right? Because like they will probably lose some pieces. They will have to bring in pieces to replace the pieces that they're losing. Unfortunately, with success, is when you play in a league like MLS, that means that other teams from bigger leagues with more money will pay attention. I'm looking at a guy like Ahmed. I'm looking at a guy like Laborda. What is their future going to be like going forward? And that is going to take some work. But that's just how it is. And Müller, I think, is not. It hasn't come here to, do an apprenticeship in North American marketing and media and go back to Bayern Munich and become the president of the club. That's not what he's here for. Also, maybe, but his number one thing is to play successful on the field, and they didn't win today, but I think he's proven that he's not here on holiday.
No, he is not. And let me correct myself. Who am I to correct the great Manuel Veth? It is 4 in a row Canadian championships.
4, right?
For
I was pretty sure it was.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, no, I know. I was pretty sure it was 3, but my goodness, time flies when you get to this age. Okay, so let's, honestly, Manuel, if you're a Whitecap supporter and you're a religious person, you might think that Thomas Muller was delivered for this moment, that somehow he rode in from a donkey from Bethlehem at this incredibly important and sensitive time in terms of the Whitecaps and their stadium situation. Now, you and I talked, as you mentioned, about the ominous words from Don Garber this week about BC Place and getting a stadium deal done, that ominous story in The Athletic written from Toronto, we should probably mention. mention. And you were a lot more bullish on it than I was. The next thing you know, we're sitting at dinner last night, and Patrick Johnson in the province has a story that makes it seem very positive about the Hastings site for a new stadium. And then, sure enough, here comes the press release that Hastings Racecourse is no more in terms of live thoroughbred racing, that there will not be any more racing effective immediately on 30. And so now you have all of this land in Vancouver, and we know how precious land is in Vancouver, that seems set for redevelopment and entertainment district, with the Vancouver Golden Eyes now playing at a refurbished Pacific Coliseum. And I know you've done some reporting on this as well, my friend. So you tell me, we're going to hear from Jesper Sorensen on this very topic here. In fact, let's hear from you, and then we'll play what Jesper Sorensen had to say about it. I know you've done some reporting on this, Manuel. What do you think? How positive are you on getting a stadium constructed, a soccer stadium constructed on that Hastings site?
So I don't think it's imminent. I think there's a vote in City Council that I think they're going to win, and then it moves forward from there. But when you talk to people on all sides, and I also need to mention Mayor Ken Sim was here at the game. He was hung out at the tailgate, and I think he mentioned to some fans that he was positive. The solution could be found, although he had a few beers, so who knows. Look, I think that they're really bullish about this idea. They want to build an arts and entertainment district similar to what they have in Edmonton around the new, is it a Rogers Arena Stadium? What's the name for Edmonton? It's something Rogers, the arena there. And then Crypto, of course, in LA has an arts and entertainment district that they built to revitalize the downtown core of Los Angeles. That is sort of the vision. Maybe bring the Giants into Pacific Coliseum as well. That's another thought that was mentioned to me. That is not fact. That's not me fully reporting something that is going to happen, but just something that was mentioned in passing to me as a possibility of bringing more teams there and having more, of like a place where people can hang out and party and drink and have places. And, ideally you have hotels there and a casino. The race course closing, I think, is a really strong indication that is moving in that direction. It's not final, it's not decided yet. I've been told BC Place remains an option as well. You have to remember, Axel Schuster said there is no lease in place for 2026. They have dates to play there. They have that sorted out. They might have to play without a lease. PAFCO is a Crown corporation. Anyone who knows a little bit about Crown corporations knows that they're difficult. My wife works in government. She explains this to me repeatedly, that Crown corporations are difficult. She audits the government too, and she says it's extremely difficult to audit. So I'll take her word for it. So things. I think Don Garber fired out these words because he was unhappy with the slow progress that was being made with BC Place. And people are saying, it's extortions, whatever. Like, why is he doing this? He's putting pressure on the owners. Like, no, he's the commissioner of the league. Don Garber will only say what the owners tell him to say. That's the work of a commissioner. When the commissioner goes out and says something, it's just because the owner said to him, Don, you have to go out there and tell them that. Right? That's his job, right? But I'm pretty optimistic.
We should mention that this is a page out of the Washington, D.C. playbook that he used years and years ago when he was pressuring that community as well to build a new soccer facility. And yet, what I find extraordinary about it is all that tough talk. And then if you're a Whitecaps fan and you're sitting there sweating that, not 24, 36 hours later, you get all these positive local reports about what could be. So I think those comments are almost completely neutered at this stage, or at least diluted compared to how heavy they landed earlier in the week. I mentioned that Jesper Sorensen spoke on this matter. We were in the press conference with Coach. Mm-hmm. He had been asked a number of questions. Axel Schuster, another of your fellow Germans, has been on our show countless times, half dozen times or so since this all came up. Each and every time Axel has joined us, he's talked about how meaningful the club is to the community, the city of Vancouver, the province of British Columbia. And so I felt like it was time to ask the question to Jesper Sorensen that, hey, what's your message to the stakeholders here, given everything the club has achieved and what they obviously mean to 2,000 people plus willing to make make the journey down to Miami, not to mention the 20-some thousand watching at BC Place and the tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, watching at home today on TSN. Here's Jesper Sorensen on the Stadium Matter.
I'm going to send the last. My message is that it's not much that I'm into. We want to be in Vancouver. We want to play for Vancouver. Vancouver is a great city for soccer, and we are proud of playing for Vancouver. I'm going to send the last.
Yeah, proud for playing for Vancouver, and I think Vancouver is proud of the team that he coached this year.
Yeah, I think, he said a few other things about the team and the group and how great they came together, how proud he is to have coached this group, right? I think there is no doubt in my mind that whether it's Jesper Sørens and Axel Schuster or the players, that they're 100% committed to the city of Vancouver. I think the ownership too is always, bad things are being said about the ownership, and that's just how it is. The people like to have a Robin Hood mentality, and I get it. These are billionaires, but I think the ownership actually has a strong interest in keeping the team where it is. That it has to work too financially, right? Like that is always the thing that people you can't have a team there and they can't lose money every year. It needs to work for all parties involved. And and I will also say this: for too long, the owners didn't invest enough money into the squad itself. And that is something that, this year they've finally done. They brought in Thomas Müller. That is a big statement. And guess what happened? The community started to get engaged because they didn't bring in just a DP. They brought in a DP who cares, who's also a global superstar and also gives you eyeballs that this team has never had beyond the city of Vancouver, right? But that takes investment. That takes proactive, aggressive investment, and it takes guts, and it takes, the sort of thing that the Vancouver Canucks are sort of lacking right now. Like, be aggressive in either to be doing a rebuild or not doing a rebuild. Just make a aggressive decision, and if it backfires, okay. But like in this case, it worked, and that is, I think, that is my takeaway from this: that they finally decided, okay, more of this wishy-washy stuff. Let's bring in a big name. Let's try. And
no question.
The takeaway from this is it worked, right? It worked. It was a resounding success.
Vision. I think the word we're all looking for here is vision, and what Vancouver Whitecaps FC showed this year is vision. It's funny, and I don't think he'll mind me saying it all these years later, but back in 2018, 2019, I had a conversation with Greg Kerfoot, the elusive, reclusive Greg Kerfoot, and I said to him, all these other teams have been able to add, well, not all, but many of these other teams have been able to add this signature designated player who has come in and has changed the fortunes of the team on the field. Now, not all of them played ball, right? Not all of them represented all that much at the gate in terms of ticket selling. And Greg said to me, look, we've tried, we've struck out, but the DP we're looking for, that big name international European global soccer superstar we're looking for, has to achieve two things for us. Number one, he's got to help us win. Number two, he's got to help us sell tickets. And I would argue that Thomas Müller has not only that, but he's also created community engagement, unlike we have seen community engagement in Vancouver with one of our athletes in such a short time. And it's amazing, Manuel, because even that story has changed on the ownership front. It was 51 weeks ago today, if I'm not mistaken, December 13th, that they announced that they had hired Goldman Sachs and were looking to sell the club. We talked to Jeff Mallett in August after the signing of Thomas Müller, and Jeff told us, look, Greg and I are happy to take on a partner. We're happy to sell the whole thing. Like, suddenly the goalpost shifted a little bit. They were happy to stay on. I think they saw what was possible. with the club, and needless to say, 54,000 at BC Place for that magnificent game against LAFC only, I think, added to their desire to want to stick this out and be a part of this going forward. And even if they weren't, you and I both know there was a number of well-heeled people in BC Place that day who, let's face it, you couldn't have found a better commercial for the team in the city of Vancouver than that night. So I've got positive vibes coming out of this whole season, and even in defeat here in the MLS Cup final for Kerfoot, for Mallet, for finding that investor, that partner, or that buyer that's going to permanently get the stadium, that's permanently going to keep the club in town and get the stadium deal done.
I think there's real good momentum right now, and I think the great thing about that too is there's momentum going, and because they made MLS Cup final, unfortunately lost it, of course, but because they made MLS Cup final, the next season is only where, like, Thomas just said it in the mix zone. He's like, one of the German reporters asked him, he's like, well, now it's a long off season. He's like, we're back in training in 4 weeks. Like, this is not a long off season because we played all the way to December. Like, there's momentum here, and you can keep this momentum going because by February they're playing again. There's really only 1 month where the Whitecaps will not be playing this year, right? And I think that is great news, because it means, like, this is not just going to go poof away, right? They essentially have 1 month off now to really think hard on how to grow this vision. And then they can go straight into the 2026 season with Müller under contract. I assume that will be announced in the next few days that his clause is activated for the next season. And then they can get to work, and they can get to work on the vision on how to, what happened on the field this year can be put into stones, and grow the game in Vancouver further. Also on the backs of the 2026 World Cup, where Thomas Müller is not going to be on the field, but he's going to do work for German television, right? So, like, he's going to be in and around and be an expert. It's kind of great the way it's worked out. Obviously, it would have been even better for a title, but that's life.
Yeah, and something tells me he's going to be great at being a soccer analyst on German television at the World Cup, as much as he is great as a speaker, ambassador, and of course player for Vancouver Whitecaps FC. Manuel, my friend, it is starting to get a little busy and a little noisy here in the press box at Chase Stadium, Fort Lauderdale, and MLS Cup. So I think we're going to put a wrap on the program right here. In fact, you and I are off to Fort Lauderdale to have some dinner. And hey, you're the German. You're going to lead the way. I'm sure there'll be a beer or two. Let's hope it's a Yellow Dog or a Neighborhood. Neighborhood Brewing has released Amigos Black Dark Lager, the darker side of good times. The dark lager brings a touch more attitude with the rich malt depth and just the right amount of smoothness to keep things easy drinking. I promise you there will be easy drinking tonight. Same spirit, new vibe, a beer for friends, made by friends. Manuel, can't thank you enough for helping boost our coverage here over the last week and today on Sekeres and Price about Thomas Müller and Vancouver Whitecaps FC. Any final thoughts you want to share here on this magnificent season for the club?
Well, it was a great season. I know for a lot of fans that's not really going to sink in until tomorrow or the day after, but it was a great season. And I think this is not the end of the story. And also, I just want to say, first of all, thanks to you guys for having me on throughout the season. It's a real pleasure. And I also want to just thank everyone who's reading the coverage of the Whitecaps. I know the numbers are up. There's far more engagement in Whitecaps content and MLS content and soccer content in Canada, and that's great news. That is one of my jobs at Transfermarkt, is to try growing the game from a North American, Canadian perspective. And so if you're reading and watching and listening, hey, you're helping out a lot. So I just wanted to say my appreciation.
No, I told you and Asa Rahman and Paul Dolan and a few of the other traveling media that we were down here with on the charter that a few weeks ago our producer Mike said to us, guys, there's something going on with our soccer guests. They are being consumed at a much higher level than we have ever seen before. It's been extraordinary, like in the neighborhood of 4 or 5 times more interest that we have been able to see on our data and our analytics on everything Whitecaps. And needless to say, that's a lot of winning. That's a playing beautiful soccer as they did tip to tail all season. And that's being just fantastic people in the community as well as they were throughout this season. So you're right. This is not the end of the story. In fact, this is the beginning of the story. And I think Whitecaps supporters who only have to wait, a couple of months to see them back on a pitch, they're going to be playing in a CONCACAF Champions League game again soon, won't have to wait too long to get back supporting their team at BC Place next year. Because it is going to be BC Place next year. Whether it's Alicia or
those dates are booked.
Yeah, those dates are booked. Those are set in stone. And of course, we will have more on this Whitecaps season on MLS Cup when Blake Price rejoins me on Monday for a regular edition of Sekeres and Price. But until then, Manuel, thank you very much for guesting here today. This has been a special edition of Sekeres and Price from MLS Cup and Chase Stadium in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Final score: Inter Miami 3, Vancouver Whitecaps FC 1. Thanks, everybody.